Well, good morning, everybody. Hands up. Yeah. 1, 2, 3. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for being here for the start of the 2017-2018 year. This is the 54th year in the history of Cuesta College, and you're a part of that history. So I want to welcome you today. We have an exciting program for you. We have lots of recognitions and celebrations, and also to talk about some new challenges about who we are and how we deliver our programs and services to our students and to each other. I would also like to welcome members of our Board of Trustees, of which we have 80% of the board here today. Let me first introduce the President of the Board of Trustees, Dr. Barbara George. The Vice President of the Board of Trustees and formerly an 8-year veteran as the President of the Board, Pat Mullen. And we have Trustee Sizak. Did I see him come in? I know he's planning on being here. Trustee Sizak is the second newest member of our board, representing the South County. And then our newest member of the board, representing the Tascadero, Santa Margarita area, is Mary Strobridge. Mary? Thank you. It's always important for me to see our trustees involved in the life of the college, because without their understanding of who we are and what we do and the passion we put into our work, they cannot do their work to lead the college and set policy and make financial decisions that help us to achieve what we need to achieve to be successful. So thank you, trustees, for being here. At this time, we're going to honor and recognize our new employees. And so I'm going to ask the vice presidents to come forward and introduce the new members of their clusters who are here today. My cluster doesn't have any new people. They all were introduced in the spring, but we have one starting Monday, and that will be a new executive assistant to the president and the board of trustees, who's replacing Lisa Gray, who left us to go to Cal Poly. Rat. I didn't say that. And her name is Cindy Dilbeck. So when you have an opportunity, drop by, or if you see this bewildered look, please introduce yourself and welcome Cindy to our team. She's coming out of the banking industry, but has a long line of executive assistants and management leadership. So we're really looking forward to that, and there's nobody more looking forward to that than Todd is. Because Todd has been a yeoman in terms of carrying the load of 2 people, and I want to thank Todd personally for all his work. So, Dr. Wulff.
Oh, I won't touch your stuff. Yeah. Good morning. Welcome back, everyone. I'm going to start the tone for this, so I'm going to ask you, I'm reading at least 50 names, so do not clap after each one, or we're going to be here until 1 o'clock, okay? And then if you're in the audience, I'm going to ask you to stand up, please, and so people can recognize you. All right. Heather Price is a biology lab technician. Leah Waterbury, toddler and preschool instructional assistant. Donald Cleve, library technician 2. Annabelle Gutierrez, library technician 2. Spencer Yao, physical science lab technician. Jeremy Betancourt, academic success coach. Now, I know some people, oh, that wasn't a stand. Okay, come on. All right, I like that one. That was A little more aggressive than that, guys. All right. Amy Pike with a new job. Amy. Oh, wait. No clapping. Sorry, I did that. Sorry. Just breaking my own nose. Jessica Raybon, bilingual student services site specialist. Oh, we're doing we're doing the one clap? Okay. All right, yeah. Okay. Now we're changing it. We're doing the one clap. All right. Everardo Venice Gonzalez, who is a bilingual student services site specialist. Eric Tucker, ASL, who is our new full-time temp. All right. Susan Iredale. Well, okay, come on. Susan, she's been here forever, but she was reassigned as the SLO coordinator. So, yeah. John Stokes is a career technical education liaison. So that's a new assignment for him. Janelle Guadagnino, our head softball coach, kinesiology. Yay. And I have to say, Janelle was the winner of the bocce ball tournament yesterday. Yeah. Beth Ann Dumas, North County Cluster Coordinator. Cynthia Wilschusen, Instructional Design Full-Time Tenure Track. That goes for 3 claps, I'm sorry. 1, 2, 3. She's been amazing, all of you getting onto Canvas this year. Jody Meyer, who's our new North County Cluster Coordinator. Hey. Shelby Burnett, is our new full-time tenure track mathematics instructor. Kelly Gottlieb, who's our new chemistry full-time tenure track. And just as a little story, your husband got the full-time tenure track at Hancock. So, yeah. Okay, Zachary McKieran is our new history instructor, full-time. Catherine Gritton, who's our new division chair. Madeline Medeiros, who is our permanent dean of humanities, arts, social sciences. Sibone Guinardo, associate director of the Student Success Centers. I might be slaughtering your names too, I apologize. I don't have it. There. All right. Catherine Grady is our biology instructor, part-time. Polly Mertens is our business education instructor, part-time. Cynthia Salas is Vendrum, who is the business education instructor, part-time. Sean Bowman, accounting instructor. Dean Harrell, agriculture science instructor. Albert Graham III, agriculture mechanics instructor. Grant Trexler, accounting instructor. Ignatos Vacalis, computer information systems instructor. Robin Dugan is EOPS counselor. Monica Contreras, generalist counselor. Kelly Lyons is a generalist counselor. I should not be reading these names. I'm sorry, they're about on my list. Sorry, Mark. I just sorry about that. We just make sure their names are in there. I'm trying to step on everybody's toes, obviously. Right, our new people. Roy Kaufman, engineering technology. Ryan Amborn, automotive. Rafael Trejajo, automotive. Chris Carroll, English. Adrian Lomp, ESL. Yvonne Alberg, fine arts. Sarah Bartlett, family studies. Roseanne Field, culinary. Emily Maddox, family studies. Andrea Terry, communications. Ann Schreiber, German. Charles Rich Wolfenden, communications. It goes on. Jennifer Severson, library. Ashley Shimbaku, mathematics. Jeannie Vicoy, registered nurse. Chris Glines, registered nurse. Diane Berkeley, registered nurse. Margaret Haugen, registered nurse. Stephanie Rimmel, licensed vocational nurse instructor. Alba Begay, applied voice instructor. Benjamin Arona, social science. Elizabeth Sines, social science. Belinda Morrill, sociology. David Howe, geography. Caitlin O'Brien, college success studies. Emmy Nogachi, work-based learning instructor. Sarah Gugliano, work-based learning instructor. Anasha Aga, work-based learning instructor. Doris Lance, non-credit educational program for older adults. Marilyn Hotz, non-credit education program for older adults. Morgan Ferris, emeritus and non-credit. Andrea La Rosa, emeritus and non-credit. Carol Lopes, emeritus and non-credit. And we go on. Karen Osborne Pruitt, emeritus. Zachary McKieran, non-credit. Carol Roberts, non-credit. Melissa Mellott, non-credit. Leslie Thompson, non-credit. Zachel Barones, non-credit. Susan DeLay, non-credit. Dara Rosenwasser, recognize that name. Dara Rosenwasser, who's one of our new part-time faculty and non-credit. And Kelly Marshall, who is non-credit. One big hand for all those individuals. Thank you.
Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome back. You'll look tanned, rested, and ready. You got your opening day haircuts and all that stuff done, out of the way. You've got one weekend left if you haven't started, so great to see you all back. So in administrative services, the good news is we're much more frugal. I don't have nearly as many names to read. So you can clap and holler as much as you want after every name. Hey, Deb, the numbers speak, Deb, the numbers speak. We're about the numbers in admin, so. Anyway, so I'm going to read the names. So these are either new employees or employees who've gotten a promotion over the last few months. So Christopher Galloway, skilled maintenance HVAC. If you're here, Chris, stand up. If you're not, sit down. Melanie Stokes, a custodian 1. Maria Marichalar, purchasing tech 2. That's a promotion. Kanda Anusha Reddy, programmer analyst. Scott Halverson, Network and Systems Admin. And Carlos Badilla, Public Safety Services Assistant, promotion. That's all I got. So Mark told me he'd be shorter. We'll see.
Good morning, everyone. Can I get one of those claps on the front end? All right. I realize that some of you may have not had the opportunity to meet me because I started in May. So my name is Mark Sanchez, and I'm the Assistant Superintendent, Vice President of Student Services. So great to see you all. So I have a short list also, so you can clap or clap multiple times, whatever you feel comfortable with. The first one is the promotion. Karen Garza, Admissions and Records Evaluation Analyst. Karen. The next employee is Erin Parsons. She's our Student Services Specialist. Our new cafe technician, Cheyenne Britton. And our new ESL Outreach, Recruitment, and Retention Specialist, Alicia Paniagua. That's all I have. Welcome back.
So we are very, very, very pleased to have Dr. Sanchez join us. I actually interviewed Mark when Sandy McLaughlin was hired. He was a finalist in that pool. That was like 4 years ago. And I was really impressed with him. And after I made the decision to hire Sandy, I talked to Mark and I said, don't give up on us. And so after Sandy retired, I was expecting to see Mark in the pool, but he wasn't in the pool. And so I was kind of disappointed about that. But what I didn't realize that he was transitioning from Fresno City College to Hartnell College at the time. And we had a failed search at that point. And so then we brought in Pat Ewens for a year as the interim. And so this next recruitment time, lo and behold, Dr. Mark Sanchez appeared in the pool again, So we stole him from Pantherville and Salinas, and we're so happy to have his leadership join us. So we've been going through a lot of orientations, and we get to also introduce him as the new kid on the block also. So thank you very much for that. This next phase is what we're going to be doing is recognizing years of service. Now, I need to explain something. A lot of you out there aren't really happy the way this has been going. And I can understand why. We've had so much change within human resources and so on. It seems like the definition changes all the time. So we finally wrote it all down so that we have a living document that will hopefully transcend changes in leadership and decision makers. So with classified and management, it's not as difficult because you're hired on a permanent basis. What's challenging about those two categories is that they're hired at all different times of the year. So their anniversary dates fall at different times of the year. So we kind of have to take a snapshot in time and then say, okay, you have X number of years of permanent service at this point. Some people have worked hourly off and on, but those are hard to track. And you can imagine what kind of workload that would be to be able to manage that. So that one's kind of fairly simple. It's the faculty. It's always the faculty, This makes it difficult. So at times it's been, when did I start as an employee at Cuesta College, say, teaching as an adjunct? But that means, well, I could have taught one semester, and then there was a 2-semester lapse, and then another. I could have taught, 3 courses one semester, then one 2 years later, or whatever. So it's all over the board. So we turn to the contract. The contract defines what is equivalent to a year of service in the way in which you move on the salary schedule. And that is 4 semesters teaching 15 or more units. That constitutes a year. So that is the formula that we have now put into place. So some of you may have gotten a 10-year pin 2 years ago or 5 years ago. You're not going to get a 15-year pin today. I just want to let you know. Because you started as a part-timer earlier on, so we have to go back and recalculate what's the equivalent of that. So you may have to wait another 15 years. No. So we're trying to make it as equitable as possible. So all I know is if you're really upset and you're angry, don't talk to these people. Come by and have a cup of coffee with me, okay? And we'll talk you off the ceiling, all right? All right. So I just want to put that qualifier out there. And before we start this experience, okay? But we do want to give recognition to you who are reaching milestones of service to Cuesta College. And we know it seems like, what's a pin, but for a lot of people that pin is really important. It's a mark of achievement. Just as you see when a student completes a full semester of work that they've never done before, and they get that transcript, and they get those grades, that's a sign of achievement. Well, in the workforce, we need those little signs of achievement at certain times. So we're going to start out. Melissa Richerson, our Vice President of Human Resources and Labor Relations, and Teri-Lyn Leonard, who's our Director of Payroll, Benefits, and Human Resources, are going to take care of the 5 through 25? 25, and then we have some long-serving people that I want to pay special tribute to. So anyway, I'll turn it over to Melissa, and we'll get started on that part. Thank you.
So we're actually going to do through 20 years, but there's so many names that I enlisted Teri-Lyn to help me out here. So for 5-year pins, Adrian Ayibi, Patricia Arnold, Bruce Pedrigian. When I call your name, if you're here, please come forward to receive your pin. And there's a lot of names, so forgive me. Lara Baxley, Eric Beaton, David Becker, Ethan Bertrando, Jamie Betancourt, Janelle Blue, Danae Boggs, Christine Braun, Denise Braun, Courtney Brongo, Dawn Brown, Susan Chilton, Christine Clickard, Bonnie Cullen, Joe Dansby, Philip De Silva, Jules Davis, Sherry Davis, William Demarest, Calvin DePass, Azalea Dillard, Mary Ann Dockstader, Jane Donaldson, Leslie Dragoo, Leisha Duarte, Eltai Elgador, Alyssa Emerson, Timothy Fay, Don Furberg, Cheryl Jeanette, Russell Jeanette, Pamela Gordon Johnson, Sarah Guglielmo, Belinda Hammond, Bruce Henderson, Steve Hendricks, Tony Hertz, Neil Higgins, Devon Hodgson, Jennifer Hubbard, Ken Hustad, Marceline Irving.
My turn. I'm still on the 5. Tanya Iverson, Ellen Jagger, Bryce Jenkin, Beth Johnson, Marshall Johnson, Michelle Call, Clark Kerr, Tiffany Kerr, David Kirkhart, Selena Klippenstein, Brian Kriowski, Lori Ladd, Madeline Lamont, Roger Lee, Elizabeth Lobo, Brian Loker, Louise Luthi, Kathleen Markov, Erin Martin Elston, Michelle Medhurst, Sonia Mendoza, Rebecca Michaud, Monica Millard, Coral Mitten, Linda Mintz, Patrick Maloney, Laura Moore, Catherine Mulholland, Christine Murphy, Megan O'Neill, Matthew Owen, Amity Perry Boada, Elisa Queenan, Donald Rapucci, Raymond Reed, Kirsten Riggenbach, Catherine Robichaudi, Tracy Robichaud, Jude Rock, Dennis Rowley, Robert Satterwhite, Lisa Schickler, Susan Scholl, Faraday Schroeder, David Scott, Patrick Scott, Nancy Seiler.
We're not done yet. We are not done with 5 years. We're not done.
No,
Nope.
we're not done.
We still have more 5 years. Sorry. We're not done yet. We each took a page so that we could give ourselves a rest.
Okay.
So we're almost done. Amy Serta, Louise Spadia Beckham, Amy Stapp, Jeffrey Stein, Nancy Steinmetz, Diane Stevens, Carla Swift, Cassandra Tarantino, Cynthia Taylor Burns, Michael Walker, William Walters, Melinda Weaver, Sarah Wiebe, Robert Wilson, Ann Woods, Catherine Wright, and Sherilyn Young, and that is it for the 5-year pins. Okay, now for tenure. Not as long of a list, but we'll tell you when we're done. Lori Allen, April Anderson, John Arno, Michelle Bach-Peters, Deborah Barker, June Beck, Russell Blair, Delbert Chassé, Mostafa Shinishian, Brett Clark, Marilyn Cleaves, Karen Kaufman, Lucy Conklin, Emily Conrad, Dora Cosillo, William Cross, Linda Donnelly, Daniel Fahey, Sherry Ferguson, Michael Fonts, Karen Garza, Susan Jin, Anthony Gutierrez, Frank Ha, Zachary Hall, Thomas Hollis, Nancy Hurd,
Richard Jackson, Amy Kaiser, Dennis Kehoe, Joshua Lyman, Suzanne MacArthur, Clint Martin, Lori McConico, Ronald McDonald, Lee Smithsted, Stephen Mueller, Catherine Neidhart, Rocky Nystrom, Thomas Patchell, Hunter Perry, Mary Renzi Coates, Marcia Robinson, Paula Robinson, Terry Sanders Brown, Deborah Schlancer, Susan Shaw, Bruce Silverberg, Jerem Smithson, Mark Sparlin, Deborah Stakes, Richard Staley, Cindy Stever, John Stokes, Regina Vogue, Ken Ward. That's it for 10. All right, we're going to start with 15 now. All right. Brett Allen.
Hold on, say it again. 15.
15 years. We ready? All right. Brett Allen. Chris Ballou. Donna Bauer. Denise Chelson, Lisa Curtis, Tanya Downing, John Fetcho, Denise Forey, Christopher Green, Matthew Green, Jason Hopkins, John Knudsen, Anthony Koninger, Jacqueline Masucci, and there's more, hold on.
Madeline Medeiros Taylor, Jody Meyer, Gerardo Morales, Bonnie Morris, Richard Phipps, Margarita Ramirez Morales, Catherine Rietstra, Jennifer Sanders Marino, Randy Scoville, Terry Sherman, Ali Solomon-Khani, Antonia Torrey, Bree Valle, Joe Vasta, Estela Vasquez, Donald Boyer, Regina Vrind, Jonathan Wilson, Pauline Wishart, and Ann Wulff. That's it for the 15 years. And then you do 20. Okay, now for 20 years of service. Everybody ready? Christopher Killian, Marjorie Allred, Ruth Beering, Kevin Bottenball, James Ackemeyer, Hyla Hafley-Kluver, Catherine Hillman, Catherine Jimison, Margaret Corushelli, Dee Lamone, Allison Morzan, Barbara Miller, Amy Mooney, Sherry Moore, Kathy Peters, Nanette Pena, David Petroska, Blake Reed, Robert Schwenke, George Stone, James West, and Catherine Zapirian.
Thank you. We're now moving on to the, I was going to say the geriatric portion of the, but then that would be insensitive, since I are one, yeah. But we have individuals now who have put a significant amount of time invested in this institution, in us as a colleague, and also our students. And I want to give recognition, first of all, to our individuals who have given us 25 years of service. And we'll start with Dennis Baeyen. Dennis? Welcome. Greg Lewis. Thank you. Hi, Greg. Susan Lloyd. Erin Rodriguez. And Pete Schuler. I'm not sure Pete's here. These are our 25-year pin recipients. Now we have 3 individuals who have served the institution for 30 years. And I know some of these people may not be here. I know one is on a leave of absence right now. But the first one is Counselor Dana Goff. I'm not sure if Dana's here. The second is biology instructor Nancy Mann. And the third one is history professor Mark Weber. They're probably so tired they just couldn't be here. No, I will make a personal delivery with donuts, to there. And then we have one 40-year recipient. So we may need public safety to help them to the stage. And that, that was a long time ago, 40 years. And the 40-year recipient is Don Norton. So Don?
We actually have one more award to hand out, one more service award, and that will be presented by Dr. Barbara George.
Wow, what a wonderful assemblage. Nice to see you all, very nice to see you all. You know, I know on many levels, and for many years, I know this is a college of firsts. First in faculty and staff excellence, first in student success, first in community service, and so much more. Oh, but now we have a first time ever an employee for 50 years. Talk about your geriatric crowd. And I should know. So We today are going to present our first 50-year award, probably our last 50-year award, to our friend who has had such passion for this college, such dedication, and such commitment. My friend, our President and Superintendent, Dr. Gil Stork.
This comes with 6 hip replacements and a quintuple bypass surgery, and I'm waiting to get a consultation on a knee replacement. So, you know, so when I walk by the refrigerator in a house, I stick to it, you know. So. All right. Enough of that. Yeah. Okay, we're moving on now into the awards portion of the program this morning. And I'm going to be presenting the Academic Employee of the Year, the Classified Employee of the Year, and the Management Senate Employee of the Year. And then we're going to ask Stacy Millich, the Academic Senate President, to join me. And she's going to be able to present the Teaching Excellence Award. And then finally, I will present the Dr. Marie E. Rosenwasser President's Leadership Award, which is an award that is exclusively given in the control of and the privilege of the President. And so the Academic Employee of the Year. Let me invite to the podium Dr. Chris Gilbert. You can see Chris is really excited. Yeah. Well, it's no secret. You know, Chris's commitment and selfless effort exceeds all of our expectations. Chris serves as the faculty advisor to the Alpha Gamma Sigma Honor Society and contributes a significant amount of his time in mentoring this gifted group of students. He's played a significant role as the member of and chair of the Curriculum and Institution Tenure Review Committees. And he's dedicated to nurturing and making sure of the success of all of our students. So ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to represent your choice as the Academic Senate, or as the Academic Employee of the Year, Dr. Chris Gilbert. And now the Classified Employee of the Year. Let me invite to the stage Sean Landers. As many of you know, and some of you may not know, that Sean is retiring at the end of this semester. So this award, this recognition is actually the down the floor and out the door award. You know, so. But you know, we know Sean. Sean is on our emergency call button on our phones. He serves on the Distance Education and Web Committees and is a key contributor to the Technology Committee. Sean has been instrumental in the success rollout of several key projects for the district. He's consistently responded to the college's technical training needs, quickly creating tutorials for Canvas and working very closely with the new instructional designer to ensure a seamless training experience. But most importantly, Sean always has a kind word and extreme patience. Heaven knows he's got patience for people like me and you that he supports at the college, as well as his department coworkers. He is eager, absolutely eager to help anyone with an issue, and goes well beyond to make sure he can find a solution that keeps people working towards the Cuesta's goals. So Sean, we're going to miss you, but thank you, for all you've done for Cuesta College. And I know you're a good guy because I had your son in one of my math classes, and he was very, very complimentary of you as a dad. So congratulations.
We're 22 minutes behind schedule, so let me just sum this up. You know, I've been here 14 years, and ever since I started to see how this thing went, I've always been, is it going to be me? And then you start going through your head of all the things that you want to say, and each year it's like, oh, well, actually, yeah, they deserved it more than me. And the fact is that there's probably a whole bunch of people out there that deserve this a lot more than me. But, you know, it's... in the Bible, Paul talks about the body of Christ. Forgive me, I'm not trying to proselytize here. But he talks about that everybody fits together, you know. And sometimes we tend to segregate into faculty and classified and those other admin type of people. Sorry. But the fact is, and this is what I love about the scripture, Paul talks about that even those that we don't notice, that we shy away, that we don't consider, they are indispensable. And that's this. We are indispensable. And I thank you guys. I love you.
Wow, Sean. Whoa. Yeah, I got goosies. Yeah. All right. And the selection from the Management Senate this year goes to Erin Lastreto. So this is one of those sleeping giants. Those employees that we have that don't make a lot of noise. They're not, they don't go out to get recognition, but they are the backbone and they're the franchise players of this organization. And Erin typifies that. She's kind of under the radar, but boy, is she out leading strong segments of this college. She is a consistent and continuing to demonstrate being a very capable leader, always supporting and encouraging those around her. The Board of Trustees and I have been working on a succession plan. So I have been giving them my feedback on you as potential leaders within the college. And so I have made recommendations of people that they need to watch over the years to look for and undermine and identify, potential leaders in this college. And so Erin's on that ready hit list. She is on that list. Erin takes great care in managing her department and providing assistance to staff to ensure they have current information on all programs and services. And she's done such a wonderful job working with the Triple SP program. And, but she comes from good stock. You know, she's the daughter of our former Spanish teacher and division chair, Ralph Suter. And so she is part of the family of Cuesta College. She already knew she was going to work here someday because it was in her DNA. But I'm very proud of Erin, and I think she's a great representative of the future of Cuesta College. So Erin, congratulations.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much. Wow, especially after what Sean said, I don't know how I can follow that, but I can say that Cuesta has meant so much to me and my family. You know, I started here 9 years ago in admissions and records, and I got the opportunity to continue to move forward, and I'm so excited. I think right now, you know, as our chancellor said, it's a great time to work at California Community College. There's so many exciting things that we're doing, and I'm so happy to be a part of it. And I have such a pleasure to work with amazing people, my assessment staff, enrollment success specialists, counselors. I have great mentors, and I really appreciate this opportunity. Thank you so much.
And now Stacy Millich will come forward and present the Teaching Excellence Award.
Good morning. What a super honor and privilege to have my very first act as your Academic Senate President to present the Teaching Excellence Award. Can't think of a better way to start. So I think we all know great teachers. Great teachers, I think, are well prepared. They're certainly consistent, and they also are subject matter experts. But I think what makes an excellent teacher is something that's much more intuitive, and that's that teacher that you have that you almost feel like they're sitting in the classroom with you and experiencing what you're experiencing, and able to actually pivot their lecture to make sure everybody in that classroom is feeling enriched. So it's a really intuitive and empathetic, I think, type of quality, and humility and humor, of course. So this year's recipient is certainly all of those things. And I'm going to try really hard not to reveal the gender, but I'll probably mess it up, so bear with me. So I thought it'd be fun to bring back that old tradition of having me give you guys hints about who the person is, and then you guess who it is. But instead of having you shout it out, what I thought we'd do is wait till all of the hints are done, because I'm pretty sure a vast majority of you will know who this person is before we get to the end. And then at the count of 3, I'll say 3, 2, 1, and you guys will all shout out the person's name in unison as one college. Right? This is gonna work, Dr. Stork, yes? Right. I was told I won't fall on my face today, so we'll see how it goes. All right, so this person lives in San Luis Obispo.
Oh, yeah, I know that person.
You got him? I mean, the person? See, I already blew it. This person can be seen running down Orcutt Road at any particular hour, typically in the morning. This person is married. Was that you, Gilbert? You running down Orcutt? Is married, has a love of Shakespeare, big clue, and here comes the giveaway, is rumored to be a sibling of Clint Eastwood. Like Mr. Eastwood, this person was won an award in marksmanship in high school. This person is described by this person's colleagues. Wow, look at this, I'm actually getting through it. as, quote, a tireless advocate for students, encouraging them and inspiring them during this person's lectures, as, quote, knowing the power of a good story and working to help students find ways to bring their stories to light, as, quote, being rigorous, diligent, compassionate, and smart. This is a funny one. As employing some type of magic or flux capacitator, right, to create time to talk to everyone about everything in a manner that implies that this person has nowhere to go and has nothing else to do. And finally, this person as having to be forced by the instructor that comes after this person to leave the classroom with this person's gaggle of doe-eyed, dedicated Shakespeare acolytes and disciples in tow. So on the count of 3, 3, 2, 1. Dennis! Come on up, Dennis! Got me into.
Well, I'm really surprised. I don't know if all those things were true, but I do carry my journal with me everywhere, so I've got all kinds of notes I could talk to you about things. But I just got back about 2 days ago from my 50th high school reunion. Talk about geriatrics. 30 of them were already dead, and so that it sort of always shocks you a bit. And everyone was asking me, are you retired yet? And they were all happy to be retired. And I had this thing where I thought for a moment, I would actually teach forever. I would. But I think this is probably my last year. I started teaching, I think, my first year in graduate school, which was like 45 years ago, teaching English 1A. So I've been doing it a long time, even though here it's only been, I got my pen today. So this is like, I get all kinds of great stuff today. Maybe I could check. So anyway, I would do it forever. I don't know what I'll do. Lenny Erickson, some of you may know her, has a group of people that talk about ideas, so I may join their group when I'm done. But anyway, thank you very much for this award. I really appreciate it.
A childhood friend of mine, we met in the 3rd grade, who ended up being my best friend and my best man at my wedding. About 6 months ago, he called me. He said, "You still working?" I said, "Yeah." He says, "How long have you been working there?" I said, 50 years. He goes, "Wow." He says, "That's really either amazing or really stupid, you know?" I said, "Yeah, I got to think about that, yeah." The final award is my privilege to be able to select, as I look around the campus, and I look at our classified, our faculty, and our management group, and I look for examples of unique and timely leadership. And So I was really excited that I settled on an individual who is also one of these under-the-radar, kind of quiet-spoken persons, but has made a tremendous, tremendous contribution in the life of our students. You know, our students live and die by their ability to pay for college, you know, and they need money now, not 6 weeks from now, not 3 months from now. They need it now so they can quit living in their car, or they can buy food, and they can get their books so they don't have to wait 6 weeks before they can bring a book to class. And so I'd like to invite today to come forward, and that's the director of our financial aid program, Patrick Scott. You know, Patrick was one of those undercover agents in the financial aid office, and when we started to have some changes in leadership and people leaving, we were looking around for that next leader. And who emerged first as an interim director was Patrick, and things really started to happen. I forget, Patrick, when you joined the staff, the wait time for an award was how long?
3 months.
3 months to get an award given to a student. And now that time has dropped to
2 weeks.
2 weeks. And that's not just for a few students. Those are thousands of students who are coming through our door, who are seeking help. And Patrick and his very capable staff, because I know Patrick will tell you he can't do it alone. He's got a very wonderful staff who have taken full advantage of automation, and they are now delivering their promise to our students about getting their funds in their hands so they can put it to work to help them be successful students. So Patrick, thank you very much for your leadership, and I'll be watching.
What a tremendous honor. I work with one of the best teams that anybody's ever worked with. The financial aid office here has been incredible. If you've been around a while, you know there's been a change in our culture, and we've been really working on getting that student focus going. 5 years ago, when I started, and I got my first 5-year pin, the first day of school, we had 350 people that were packaged and ready to go for their financial aid. When I started in 2007 as an adjunct in anthropology, one of the things I noticed right away was nobody had the books. I would ask them, what do you think you're going to do? How are you going to succeed in this class if you don't have the books? And they said, well, I don't have my financial aid. And I said, how can that be? And then 5 years later, I found out why. It's okay. We've moved our approach a little less conservative, but still safe, and I think that's important. And this year, next week, Monday, almost 3,000 students will have their aid in place when the fall starts. And like Dr. Stork said, that's not me. That's my team, and that's the people in student services. That's the faculty who remind people about financial aid. It's all of us that are making that happen because we have to get that message out. If a student at Cuesta, we've looked at the data, a student at Cuesta who gets financial aid is 20% more likely to succeed than the overall population. And that overall population includes the ones with financial aid, so the number really is much higher. Financial aid is critical. If you have a student now in your class, speaking to the faculty, if you're not teaching class, it would be kind of odd for me to say that. But if your faculty, there's someone in your class who does not have a book, send them to me right away. They are at risk. We can get them. We have a number of different tools at our disposal right now through Foundation, through Student Equity with the help of Quay and Dr. Wulff, that we can put in place for these students. Please send them to us so we can help them. Thank you for the award.
And now I'd like to invite to the stage Dr. Wulff. Thank you.
I'm going to kind of talk off the top of my head and not go off the notes, but excuse me. Think about this. 3 years ago, going on to our 4th year, what we've been able to do with equity funding, unbelievable. You know, not only for improvement of students' success in our classroom, you know, for faculty and staff, professional development. I mean, it just goes on. And every year, when you think about we always had an equity plan, but it always sat on the shelf. And then 4 years ago, we started that equity plan, and the first one was sent back by the Chancellor's office saying, this is not good. That's what they said. And so we went back to it, and we've gone through 3 equity directors in 3 years. And each time we've gotten better and better and better. And I am so proud of what we're accomplishing. And you can see with everything that we have done, we're seeing improvements, but we need to move much faster, and we need to do more things. So one of the things that I'm really proud of, and I hope that you had the experience of, is last spring we had the faculty retreat, and we brought Dr. Woods in, and he gave us a phenomenal workshop. And so yesterday morning we offered the Professional Development Committee, which has done a phenomenal job, and I hope you all participated in Flex Extravaganza, and thank you for the Professional Development Committee under the leadership of Cynthia Wilson, who's done a fabulous job. We had a phenomenal workshop. Last night, we probably had close to 260 to 280 community members attend a forum on equity, diversity, and inclusion. And then this morning, our keynote speakers will be Dr. Harris and Dr. Woods. But what I really want to emphasize, and we need to emphasize as an institution, is we have to be inclusive. We have to create a welcoming environment for our students, but not only for our students, but for each other, for all employees. As an employer and employee, what are we doing to make sure people feel welcome? And so I hope to continue this emphasis as we move forward. And the other thing that I'm very excited about, I have to read my glasses on so I don't do it, sorry, but all of you, the whole college, has an opportunity to participate on an online certification. And it's offered through the Center for Organizational Responsibility and Advancement, and it will be free. We're also offering certifications to all instructors within our county and K through 12 school districts. But this one is on unconscious bias and microaggressions. So I hope you take advantage of it. It's free for all of you. There's books included, and it's for the year. But before we get introduction, I want to introduce Quay Dang, who is our Equity and Success Specialist, and she has done a phenomenal job with all of your help because all the ideas are coming from you. So thank you, and Quay, come on up.
Good morning. I have the pleasure and honor this morning to introduce and welcome our guest speakers today. We have 2 phenomenal speakers, and I'm so excited to have them here. Dr. Frank Harris III is Professor of Post-Secondary Education in the College of Education and co-director of the College Community Equity Assessment Lab at San Diego State University. His research is broadly focused on student development and success in post-secondary education, with more than 50 scholarly publications to his credit. Harris's scholarship has been published in leading journals for higher education and student affairs research and practice. His commentary has been sought by several high-profile media outlets, including CNN, the New York Times, and the Chronicle of Higher Education, to just name a few. Before joining the faculty at San Diego State, Harris worked as a student affairs educator and college administrator in the areas of student affairs administration, student crisis support and advocacy, new student orientation programs, multicultural student affairs, and enrollment services, and academic advising. He is joined by his partner, J. Luke Wood, Ph.D., is also a professor at San Diego State University and the director of their Community College Leadership EDD and Joint Ph.D. program in education between San Diego State University and Claremont Graduate University. Dr. Wood is also co-director of the Community College Equity Assessment Lab, a national research and practice center that partners with community colleges to support their capacity in advancing outcomes for men of color. His research has been featured by the White House Initiative on Educational Excellence for African Americans, New York Times, Chronicle of Higher Education, and Huffington Post, just to name a few. He has authored and edited 14 books. His most recent books include Supporting Men of Color in Community Colleges, Teaching Boys and Young Men of Color, and Teaching Men of Color in the Community College. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Wood and Dr. Harris.
Good morning, colleagues at Cuesta College. Thank you so much for having us. It's clear to us just from being here the past couple days and having the opportunity to observe you celebrate each other's accomplishments. This is a special place, so we're very excited to be here. I want to first start and acknowledge thanking our members of the Board of Trustees who are here. We had the opportunity to meet a couple folks today, so thank you for your tremendous leadership. Of course, thank you, President Stork, for your 50 years of service at this wonderful 50 plus, right? This wonderful institution. And we have to, of course, give a special shout out to Dr. Wulff, who's been great to work with and organized a wonderful community event yesterday. So we had such a good time engaging folks at the college as well as folks in our community and business leaders. So that was wonderful. And of course, Baeyen, who's been with us at every step of the way in planning our visit. And I mentioned this yesterday, so I think that was at one point, Quay and I were having conversations about how do we plan and prepare and, you know, what are the things that we want to emphasize. And she was on vacation during the time, so it just shows the commitment that she has to making sure that this event has been meaningful and had the impact that we've all desired. And are Ryan and Amy from Institutional Research here? Okay. Oh, there they are. Yep. So thank you for providing the tremendous data points that you shared, some of which will be represented here in the presentation, and it gave us a real good feel for where the campus is with regard to equity and student success, so we appreciate that. So we're going to jump right in and get started. Oh, sorry about that. Here we go. Okay. So really this presentation, as is represented and as Dr. Wulff mentioned, really focuses on what are the things that we can do to improve student success for men of color from an equity perspective. Now, our work has traditionally focused on men of color, and for one primary reason is that men of color tend to be situated at the bottom of most indicators of student success. But we hope that everyone will walk away with a better understanding of the experiences and the things that we can do for men of color, but also see that what we have this year has some broader implications beyond men of color. So when we talk about good teaching strategies and when we talk about good service and support strategies, of course, there's an intensified benefit for men of color, but hopefully you'll find that these are things that work well for all students. So that's one point that we want to emphasize and make sure that we walk away with today. We'll also talk about high-impact institutional practices and how they serve students well from an equity perspective, as well as a couple other things that we'll hope to emphasize and achieve at the conclusion of this address. Yep. So, as Quay mentioned, we are co-directors of the Community College Equity Assessment Lab at San Diego State. And this is an initiative that we began about 5 years ago. It actually began as M2C3, the Minority Male Community College Collaborative. We rebranded a couple years ago because, again, we noticed that the work that we were doing had broader implications beyond men of color. But the key point that we want to mention here is this, that we started this initiative when it became apparent to us that there wasn't enough focus on community colleges and the amazing work that happens at community colleges and the opportunities that are provided to students from underserved, underrepresented and underserved populations at community colleges. Most of the research and most of the focus in this area has been on four-year institutions, which is wonderful. But when we're talking about populations like men of color, for example, or students from low-income backgrounds and so forth, many of them, the vast majority, the overwhelming majority, are enrolled at a community college, a place like Cuesta College. So we felt like we had to do some more intentional work in that area and had to provide some leadership and really help to expand the published discourse and the research on and really highlight what's taking place at community colleges.
So I want to talk a little bit about the survey instruments that we have, because it helps inform some of the sense-making that we have around the issues that we talk about. So what we do when we partner with the college is we have a battery of different tools that help us understand what influences student success at that campus. And one of those tools is called the Community College Success Measure. And what it is an institutional level needs assessment tool. It's a Scantron instrument that we've developed based upon an extensive review of research. We piloted it at a number of colleges. It took us 3 years really to get it to the point where it was usable on campus. And so it's distributed to randomly selected course sessions. Thank you. Sorry. It's not a mic. Yeah. It's distributed to randomly selected course sessions. And so what happens is the students complete it, it comes back to us, and then what we do is we analyze, okay, so what's taking place with the population here? And it helps illuminate trends and patterns. It helps to illuminate challenges students face. And as you can see on the slide, we've done this instrument at 102 campuses. So, and these campuses are across the country, so all over the place in terms of what we've learned. But as part of that process, we've seen some pretty recurrent patterns. We've seen campuses that have that across the campuses have very similar trends. So what we do in our presentations is we talk about what are some things that we've learned across the 102 institutions. Now, separate from that, we have an instrument called the Community College Instructional Development Inventory. That's focused on faculty. It helps to illuminate some of the trends as it relates to teaching and learning practices that we know are important for student success. So all of this is to say that we're not just making stuff up. A lot of this is based in extensive research that we've done that's been focused on this population, and not just the research that we've done, but also the team of individuals who are behind us. I really appreciated when the person from financial aid came up and acknowledged their team. With us, we have a similar team that really helps us to do this work, and so that's where these insights come from. Now, separate from that, we also collect qualitative data through focus groups with students, through interviews with faculty and staff, and that also helps us to have an understanding of some of the challenges from a different perspective. And what we find oftentimes is there's a lot of synergy, there's a lot of overlap in terms of what people say are the issues, and so that helps to complement what we find with the quantitative work as well. Now, this campus has been engaged in other assessment instruments. One of them is called the Community College Survey of Student Engagement, which is a different shop, and they do great work, focused particularly on engagement. And this is some data from, they have a climate survey, and it looks at different issues as it relates to, is this a climate that's good for students who are students of color, for female students, for LGBT students, for students with disabilities. So it's looking at a lot of different issues as it relates to climate. So this is data from them that this campus collected, and it was provided to us by institutional research. Now, what we did is we just highlighted in red right? The students who basically disagreed or had the kind of more negative end of responding to this. Now, in our work, we have subject matter experts who helped us identify what might be some thresholds to think about, okay, is this something that we should be concerned about? Because, you know, if 5% of the students respond and say that this is, you know, a negative climate across groups, is that something we should be worried about? You know, what is that breaking point? For us, in the work that we do, often that breaking point is around 20%. So we figure that we have about 20% of our students who are saying something that within a certain designation that we probably need to be paying attention to that. And so this is looking at this campus and saying, okay, is Cuesta College a non-racist environment? And so the negative end of that scale, of course, would be students who have some sort of concern. And you can see that this is one of the questions. The climate survey in general showed some really positive data. But this is something that we need to think about as well, is, okay, so how are our students of color experiencing this campus? And you can see across the 20% that there's some groups on this campus who are experiencing the campus in ways where, hey, you know what, we need to be more attentive to it. And last night, what we did is we talked about this whole notion of unconscious bias and microaggressions. So if you weren't there, you'll be able to hopefully participate in the training, and you'll learn it's not about saying, hey, we're bad, right? It's about recognizing that all of us unconsciously make mistakes that we don't recognize are taking place, and that there's a need to continue to push forward and move forward as we, you know, try to make this the best institution that we can. Now, we also looked at some data in terms of I think administrators are generally concerned about my welfare on this campus, and there were some trends and patterns here. If you look at the 20% rule, we can see that in general there's some issues as it relates to the African American population on this campus. Now, the African American population on this campus is very small. But at the same time, if you have a percentage of students who are feeling a certain way, we don't want to ignore that. We don't want them to be statistically insignificant because it's such a small sample size. So these are just some things to keep in mind to say, hey, you know what? We still have some work to do. And so we're going to talk about some strategies and practices that can help to address these issues. And so we have a theoretical framework that helps us to organize our thinking about what influences student success. And this is based upon extensive research that's been done both from our shop as well as some other different researchers who do work on student success, particularly focused on men of color. And essentially, it follows what we call an IEO approach. Inputs, so what are students, what are the experiences that they have before they come to our institution? Experiences, which are those domains that are in the middle, so what is occurring while they're a student here? And then outputs, or outcomes, so what is essentially, as a result of that kind of combination of those things, what leads to different measures of student success. Now, this is the much prettier version. Here's the souped up version. And the good thing is, because we have an hour, we're going to talk about every single one of these items. Not really. We're going to highlight a couple different pieces of information that we think might be useful. And so what we'll do is we'll talk about primarily what's in those 5 domains in the middle. But before we get there, let me just briefly say that students come with different experiences prior to getting here that we have to keep in mind. We have students who have served our nation, who are veteran students who come with a certain experience. We have students who have delayed their enrollment. You can see age up there. We know that we're talking about men of color. Nationally, the average age of a man of color in community college is 28 to 29 years old. So oftentimes you'll find that you have students who have delayed their enrollment. And there's a sizable, at least a noticeable percentage of students on this campus who've experienced that as well, where, hey, I didn't transition necessarily directly from high school to college, but maybe I took a break for a little bit of time. I might have worked, I might have went into the military, I might have done an apprenticeship program, but then I got to this point where I recognized, you know what, I really need to go and further my education. And so then, of course, if I've waited for a period of time, I've been out of the classroom. And the last thing that I remember taking in high school is I took an algebra test, and that was 7 years ago. And the first thing I do when I come back to college is I take an assessment test. And I'm already worried about how people are going to see me. I'm already worried about, am I going to be able to do this? And then I take that assessment test, and what does it usually tell me? Well, you know what, you might need to retool in some areas, particularly when we're talking about underserved students or students of color. And so that can only serve to reinforce these worries that many of them have about their ability to be able to succeed. And so we talk a lot about, and you'll see, what kind of messaging does that require on our behalf to ensure that we're providing them with as much support as we can. So the first domain that we're going to talk about is societal factors. Societal factors, and one of the big ones that we talk about in the program, the training program that you all have access to, as well as last night, is stereotypes. And when we're talking about men of color in community colleges, there's 4 primary stereotypes that we see that they are exposed to. The first is description of intelligence, where they're assumed to be oftentimes academically inferior. Now, on the work with students, we oftentimes will interview them and they'll talk about the worries that they have that faculty members will see them as being inept, that they won't be able to do the work. We oftentimes find that when students are broken down into groups in a classroom, like I'm a faculty member and I say, hey, go ahead and break them into groups, that students look at them and they're the last to be picked, or in many cases they're not picked at all. And that, of course, only reinforces the worries and concerns that they might have when they come into the environment. Assumptions of criminality, where it is assumed that in wider society that men of color are dangerous, deviant, up to no good. And this is not just a man of color thing, but we also know that students of color in general are oftentimes viewed through this lens. And so as a result, it is not uncommon for, as educators, for us to interact with and engage with students in ways that only serve to reinforce that. And here's a quote that helps to paint a picture of both of these 2 things. So on the left-hand side, and I'm not gonna read this one, this deals with this notion of a description of intelligence or worries about, am I up to par? But I wanna read the one on the right-hand side because it gets at some of the things that happen that might be very subtle and we might not even recognize that are taking place on our campus, but serve to really shape the students' perception of their own belonging in college. And students said to us, I can't tell you how many times I'd be sitting at one of the study cubicles and security would come to me and ask for my student ID. At first, I thought it was something that they did to everybody when it got late, but then I started to notice that they asked me for mine and didn't ask anyone else for theirs. And this is some of the things that we regularly hear as part of the work that we do. And here's another one that comes from a student. It says, yeah, I feel that the stigma that has some effect on the way the professors interact with you. I've noticed a little shortness with a few of the professors that I've dealt with. I guess their assumption is you probably won't be here for financial aid after financial aid gets distributed. So they're a little hands off. So they really don't take you seriously until the 3rd week of school or you show up in their office. And when we talk to faculty members, it is not uncommon for us to hear them say, and I'm sure no one has ever said this here, and I'm being facetious when I say that, but it's not uncommon for us to hear them say, well, they're only here for the financial aid. And if we hold those perceptions, just think about this, the micro level things that we might do, say, communicate to students that serves to then reinforce this notion that, well, they're not really here for school. And then, of course, if it's a student who's worried about, what are they gonna think of me? I'm worried about my academic performance, and then I have just a small interaction that kind of reinforces some of these things that suggest that I shouldn't be here. It can really exasperate an experience that can be negative.
So the first box at the middle of the figure that Luke showed a couple of minutes ago captures the non-cognitive factors, right? So this is factors really, in many ways, related to students' identity and other psychosocial factors that shape their experiences, that shape the way they see themselves as learners, and are informed in many ways by the experiences, educational experiences that they had prior to matriculation. So there's a lot of things within this box, but the point that we want to really emphasize that's particularly important and salient for men of color is this notion of degree utility, right? Students asking or wondering, to what extent is the degree, the credential, the classes I'm taking, is it going to be value added for me, right? To what extent is it going to enhance my life or change my life or provide some meaningful life opportunities after I leave here? And this could be a real challenge and a real struggle for men of color. I think Luke noted that the average age for a male of color in community college is late 20s. So we're talking about students who've been in the workforce or who've been in the military, who've been doing something other than education and have made the decision to return because they feel like there's something that they're going to get from the experience that they don't have access to prior to enrolling here. So we look at a quote here that really sort of captures some of the challenges and some of the concerns that students often read about or share with us related to degree utility is captured in this quote. I worry that being here at this college, right, it's not going to be worth it because I see a lot of people that graduated from college with all sorts of degrees and still can't get a job and are still struggling. So I'm like, damn, I'm spending all this money on student loans. What's going to happen if I don't get a job? So we have to think about that particularly when a student is struggling or when a student has received a negative message about their readiness for college or that they're belonging here. Well, if we think about this and juxtapose it with some of the concerns that they have and some of the things that they have to sort of work through related to degree utility, we can understand why some students might disengage or why some students might choose to not persist and pursue other opportunities. Also within the non-cognitive domain is this notion of identity. Now, whenever we're talking about students of color, and particularly men of color, so Latino men, for example, we're really highlighting the intersection between gender and race ethnicity. And Luke already sort of talked about some of the prevailing stereotypes, racial stereotypes, as it relates to men of color. But we also have to be mindful about how gender intersects their experiences as well. Now, in the work that we've done, and we had a good conversation about this at the Flex workshop yesterday, about what are some salient patterns related to gender and masculinity that we typically see amongst men of color and that have a salient influence on their experiences and their success. So for example, some things that we see that are pretty common are concerns around help seeking, right? So as a man, one of the things that you're sort of socialized to assume and believe is that if you need help, something's wrong with you, right? You're weak, you're inferior. So we have a lot of students who make conscious decisions to not seek out help because they are concerned that it may result in a negative assessment of who they are as a man, right? Breadwinner orientation. We have a lot of students, particularly men who are sort of socialized that as a man, your primary role in any type of family situation is to put food on the table. So when I have to make sacrifices, when I have to work fewer hours in order to attend school and make some of these other important decisions that allow me to pursue post-secondary education, I have to reconcile that with everything that I've taught and everything that I've been told I have to do in order to be a quote-unquote man in a family, right? The other pattern that we often see relates to this notion of school as this feminine space or academia as a feminine domain. And in many ways that stems from experiences, K-12 experiences in particular, where the majority of educators, K-12 educators, don't necessarily identify as men of color. We also have to think about the role that peers play in this experience, right? Where male peers in particular reinforce certain behaviors, certain attitudes related to schooling, and a lot of young men make conscious decisions to disengage because they don't want to be perceived as weak amongst their friends and some other things, some other negative characterizations related to gender and masculinity. So a couple quotes that really sort of speak to this. The notion of breadwinner orientation is an example, and this is a quote that was shared in a study a colleague and I did almost a decade ago. What kind of man has 2 kids and quits working so he can go read poetry at some damn college, right? Now, we can chuckle at that because, the way that it's stated is, it's a little bit funny, but this is a question that many men of color, right? And I would say this is not exclusive to men of color. I think it's probably prevalent among men in general, but students who are asking this question, like, shouldn't I be out working, doing something to earn money, right? Because that's what men do. Related to this notion of help seeking, and I'm actually going to read the one on the left, the one in blue, where students are kind of discussing this concern and anxiety around help seeking. When I want help, I usually don't ask for help. I'm more like, I'll find it myself. And sometimes finding it yourself doesn't help you that much. You're in the same spot you were. You're in the same spot you were in. So, I can find myself taking longer to figure things out than a kid that would ask questions, and that's one of the things that affects me, right? So students really saying, I know I need to ask for help, right? When a professor asks at the end of class, who asks questions, I should be asking questions, right? Or if you have concerns or have help, come and visit me during office hours, I should be the first one in line to go and visit during office hours. But I don't do it because I'm worried that it's going to reinforce this notion that I don't belong here and that something is wrong with me, right? So part of our role and part of what we have to do is, in some ways, and we'll talk about this when we get to implications, but reframe this notion of help and help seeking, right? Sometimes it means that we have to call it something other than help, right, in some ways. And then we talk about the academic domain, right? And really a key factor here, and there's been decades of research that highlights and reinforces this point, that the interactions that students have with you as faculty, and we can broaden that beyond faculty to educators in general, but with regard to student-faculty interactions is absolutely critical. So Luke talked a little bit about unconscious bias, right? We all have blind spots, we all make implicit assumptions, things that we don't even realize that has an influence on how we engage students, right? Or how students engage us. So we always have to be mindful, or try to be mindful, more mindful about what those interactions are and what typifies those interactions. Who are the students who we tend to be more comfortable with? Who are the students that tend to be more comfortable with us? Who are the students who we tend to be less likely to engage, and so forth? The key point here is that the interactions that students have with their faculty in the classroom and outside of the classroom, but in the classroom, are absolutely critical. And it also relates to the ways in which you engage students in classroom discussions. So it's the informal discussions that you have, but it's also the formal conversations that you have with students. So one student shared, and I'm going to actually read the one on the top, right, where a student talked about the interactions and the ways in which professors engage them during lectures. So the student said, the professor made us take ownership of the knowledge. And we're asking students, we give you a little bit more context here, we're doing a focus group and ask students, think about the classes in which you did really well, right? The class where you may have gotten an A, the classes where you really felt like you were successful. What did the professor do in those classes that really helped to facilitate your success? So students stated, the professor made us take ownership of the knowledge that was given out. And it wasn't just 2 hours of just lecturing. It was like, okay, now that you wrote this, explain this to me. What does it mean to you? So this notion of getting students, motivating students to take ownership and to apply what they're learning in a very meaningful and intentional way is really critical to their success.
So what I'm going to do is talk a little bit about the environmental domain. So the environmental domain are those things that occur outside of college that influence their lives inside of college. So, and primarily, Frank talked about these like non-cognitive outcomes, and one important one is what we call action control, which is really looking at the directed attention that students place on academic matters, AKA their focus in school, right? And when you have things that are happening externally, it's harder to focus internally. So here are some examples. Employment. We know that based upon the work that we've done, that men of color are concentrated into jobs with 3 primary characteristics. First, they're in jobs that are physically demanding. Oftentimes, they're moving boxes, digging ditches, stocking shelves, doing construction site cleanup. Second, they're in jobs that occur late at night. So they oftentimes will work the late night shift or the overnight shift. When we interview students, it's not uncommon for us to hear them talk about, they work at a construction site and they have to do cleanup before the day crew gets in because it has to be cleaned out so that the day crew can start. I've talked with a student one time and he was like, yeah, it's really tough work. And I said, well, what time do you get off of work? He says, well, it's late, because it has to be done before the day crew gets there. I said, well, what time is that? He says, well, sometimes 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning. I said, wow. I said, well, what time is your first class? 8 a.m. So a student then comes into class, they're groggy, they're in the back of the class, they're not really truly engaging. The faculty member looks at that student and might make a split-second judgment like, oh, well, see, they don't care. They're not really here. They're not really here for school. They're not paying attention. And so that's something that we hear. The third characteristic is in being in jobs that are temporary in nature. So one job for a period of time, out of that job, another job for a period of time, out of that job. It's very common for that to take place. But if you think about it, if you're going through all these transitions externally, it's harder than transition and focus internally, because transition theory tells us that more transitions leads to less focus in what you're trying to do. Another thing that we see, and then if we think about just kind of the national climate, is we may have students who are undocumented, or may have family members who are undocumented, and the threat of deportation is something that many students will worry about. One faculty member yesterday shared that you might have a student who's not as engaged in the classroom because they don't want to stand out. They don't want to stand out because they're worried about what that might mean for them, or what it might mean for their family members. And other issues that we have to think about as well. I mean, we are not that far from the men's colony, right? So we may have students in our classroom who were formerly in the men's colony. We will certainly have students in our classrooms who have family members who are there. And someone asked me a few days ago, or I guess it was yesterday, so when was the last time you were in San Luis Obispo? When's the last time that you were here? And I went to Avalon, so that was pretty close, but last time I was here was 7 years ago when I was visiting my father when he was in the men's colony. And it was when I was in school. And we drove down here several times to come see him, more than several times. And it was always on my mind. And he served the last 3 years of his life in the men's colony and died here 7 years ago. That was the last time I was here. And how many students do we have in our classrooms who have a very similar experience? Who are having all these things externally, they're worried about family members, they're worried about, okay, so now what does this mean? How do I have to try to support my family? And these are the external pressures that they face. We also then will have students who, because of a confluence of different factors, will then be struggling with food insecurity and housing insecurity. And I'm going to go right here to just a chart. We did a study last year that we released that looked at food and housing insecurities in general, and then we did a follow-up one that looked at men of color. And I can tell you this, the data demonstrate that there are some real challenges for the students, right? So here's the first one. This is looking at housing insecurity. And these are students who are saying that, hey, I have an unstable living condition. So it could be a student who's homeless, but it could also be a student who's sleeping in a car, who's sleeping in a closet, who's sleeping in a garage, who's staying in a place that's really an unsuitable living condition. So being concerned about where you're going to stay. And food insecurities and housing insecurities are things that I dealt with as a college student. Because when I went off to school, I had two parents who were home who were making money. When things went different for my family and my father was incarcerated, I went from having some support to having nothing. So I remember being a student who would be hungry all the time. I would, sometimes go 2 days, sometimes 3 days without eating. And I was pick up change off the ground and then go to Taco Bell so I could get a bean burrito and some water. So if there was a campus event that had pizza, I was there. Because it might be the only time that I would have something that I could eat. And I remember that when my brother, for a long time, he was we were both in student government, and he lived in his office. No one knew that, but he lived in his office. There was a period of time where I lived in my car, right? Because this is what happens when you have external pressures. And all the time, we were just trying to focus in school, just trying to be focused as much as we could. I got to the point one time where I had 11 incompletes on my transcript before I was able to be able to get to the point where I was more stable and clean things up. I got into the master's program that I was in eventually as a special advocate because my undergraduate GPA was so low. But these are the experiences that our students have. So if you look at this data, you can see that just in this report that we did with housing insecurity, you can see that nearly half of the black men in our sample, and this was a large sample, just California data, reported having issues with housing insecurity. But look, across the board, we have a lot of students who might be dealing with these challenges, right? It's not uncommon to have a student who's either from an affluent background or a middle-class background, and parents are like, okay, you're 18, on your own, right? We are traveling. And what does that mean for them? So it sounds like some people here might have said that before to somebody. What I had said to them, right? So these are experiences that our students have. Check this out. This is one with food insecurity. Interesting patterns here, right? This is, again, a pretty large data sample that we had. One thing that might jump out to you is, wow, the bars for men across the border are pretty high. And some of that relates back to this notion of help seeking. If as a man, I'm unwilling to ask for help, it's not like I'm going to walk up and say to somebody, I'm hungry. Me, I would have never said I was hungry. But you know what? there was a pastor who knew kind of like the situation that me and my brother were in, and he used to always bring us this box of like food, like canned goods, like every now and then, right? Just randomly. He'd just show up on our door, knock, hey, I got a box. And I'd always be, oh, you know, I don't need it, I don't need it, I don't need it. And he'd be like, oh, well, you know, just take it for you, or maybe somebody you know who might need it. And then, of course, you know, I'd be like, well, you know, maybe I know somebody. And so I would save face, and I'd take the box. And as soon as the door would close, I'd start rummaging through it because I was hungry, right? But I didn't ever want to let him know that. So just think about with our students, as a man, if I'm worried about like food, or if I'm worried about anything else as it relates to my academics, I'm not necessarily going to say that. So it speaks to the importance of us being as intrusive as we can. And we're going to talk about some strategies for doing that here in a minute. The next domain that we're going to look at here, and Frank and I are going to split this a little bit, is we're going to talk about campus ethos. Because, interestingly enough, when we look at external pressures that students face, when we look at their background characteristics, they are less predictive of their success as factors in the environmental domain. In fact, when we model all these different external pressures that students face, and then we model what they report as their experience, the variance in a regression model, 3 to 4 times more variance in our models are accounted for by campus ethos factors, meaning that, in other words, we have more control over the success of the student than the external pressures. And oftentimes it gets down to very simple things. Messages of encouragement. Messages that tell students, you can do it. You belong here. You can succeed. I believe in you. And unfortunately, one of the things that we find is that our students don't hear that enough. Now, as a faculty member, I know that I support my students. I believe in them. I want to do whatever I can to help them. But you know what? If I don't verbalize it, they don't know it. I have to do what's uncomfortable for me and sometimes just say that to them. And what we find in our work is that there's kind of this magic sweet spot. Whether or not it's a part-time student or a full-time student, they have to be hearing the message from about 4 individuals on campus. So while I might say it, if they don't hear it from other individuals as well, they're not going to believe it. But it's like this, it's an amazing thing when we do like bar charts. Like, do I get validation from one person and we look at, like, say, a non-cognitive outcome like their confidence? Pretty low. Do I get it from 2 people? Pretty low. Do I get it from 3 people? Pretty low. And then we hit that magic 4, and it, like, the bar shoots up in terms of the difference, because it speaks to the importance of a campus culture. It speaks to the importance of hearing those kind of messages from everyone. Because when I'm going through all these external challenges and I have all these other issues that are going on, you know what? Sometimes I just need to be told, you can do it. And unfortunately, when we're talking about our men of color, what we've learned in our work is oftentimes, as faculty members and as educators, we don't necessarily tell them these things as much as we need to. And in particular, you see a point up there called welcomeness to engage. Outside of the classroom, what we find is that our men of color don't always get interactions with faculty members and with other educators. In fact, in a study that we conducted, we asked students to tell us about their interactions with faculty outside the classroom, looking at men of color. And many of them in the study said, well, I don't really interact with my faculty outside of class. It's like, oh, well, can you tell us more about that? It's like, yeah. So if my faculty member is walking down the path and they see me, sometimes they'll put their head down. Sometimes they'll walk the other direction. Sometimes they'll pretend to get on the phone to avoid interacting with me. And as faculty members, like, I'm sure there's certainly faculty members who do that, consciously, right, to avoid. But probably a lot of it is either unconscious or not even recognizing, hey, I'm a faculty member, I'm a worker at a college. I have multiple hats. I'm rushing to a meeting. It's not that I'm doing it because I want to convey this negative sense to them, right? I'm just trying to stay aboard. I'm just trying to stay afloat with all the things that I have going on. But with a student who has maybe regularly experienced those kind of things in their life, it sends a message that is unintentional but still very hurtful, right? So we have to think about that. In that same study, guess what we found? We did a follow-up question to students, say, okay, well, who is it that you interact with? Who is it that you do have interactions with outside of class? And they responded, well, it's the janitor, the custodian, the food service worker, the groundskeeper. those are the people who give me messages of encouragement. Those are the people who say, keep your head in the books, proud of you, young man, keep going. And oftentimes, if we think about the demographics of our campus, those are also the individuals who are most likely reflective, racially and ethnically, of the students who we're talking about. So it's just something for us to keep in mind.
So a couple of quotes to emphasize and underscore the point that Luke made around this notion of being an internal validating agent, right? So when we talk about validating agents, it's people at the campus, whether it's a faculty member, a counselor, someone who works the front counter in financial aid, right? People who are there to convey those messages of validation, belonging, and support, right? Recognizing that students need to hear it from multiple people across the campus for it really to have an impact. Because it does speak to the ways in which they experience the campus and the campus culture, right? Now, there's some things that we have a couple examples here of what would not be considered a way to validate students, right? So let's look at the one on the left, the student shared with us. In a focus group, the professor emphasized multiple times that if you're not getting it, drop the class. No ways on how I can improve this, drop the class. Now, I'm thinking about this and filtering it through my own experience, right? And sort of the things that I learned in training to become a faculty member. And one thing that you're sort of taught is that you gotta be really tough on students, right? You gotta be really hard on students. You have to make sure that students who aren't serious, the students who aren't ready, that you sort of advise them out and weed them out, so to speak, right? And oftentimes that's sort of the ethic and the ethos that we bring to a college or to our classroom, because why? We want to make sure that it's rigorous. We want to make sure that students are really working hard and being challenged and so forth. So it comes from a good place. But we have to think about this, particularly when we're talking about men of color, we have to filter it through their entire educational journey, right? Recognizing that the vast majority of them report not having very positive interactions with educators, right? Whether it was their middle school teacher, whether it was the vice principal, or wherever it may be. So they're already coming into a place with the assumption that you all don't care about them and you don't care about their success, right? And that you're not really looking to have an authentic, engaging relationship with them, right? So that's the first thing. We also have to recognize that, again, we're talking about a population that's matriculating to college after some delayed enrollment, right? So there might already be some anxiety around, do I belong here? We also have to think about the concerns that we talked about, masculinity and gender and the messages that they're sort of navigating there. And when a student hears this, it sort of already reinforces what they assume, right? Professor's not really interested in me, not really interested in my success. I should go and do something else. It's really the point, right? So when we talk about creating a campus ethos that's validating, that's supportive, the things that the messages and the things that we say, even things that may not seem like a big deal to us, are really a big deal to students, particularly students who may feel marginalized in some way. So things that we can do, right, and things that students appreciate with regard to being and interacting with internal validating agents are reflected here. So I'll take the one on the left. Professors who are here for the passion of working with students really make a difference. Professors who really care and take the time to get to know you are the ones that I learn the most from, right? So students are really interested in having a relationship with you and knowing that you care, needing to know that you care, beyond the fact that they're just a student in your class, right? So I think part of our collective responsibility, if we really want to make sure that students, the men of color, and not just men of color, but all students have the most opportunity to be successful here, it starts with the messages that we convey to them on a consistent basis, both the macro messages that they hear, as well as the micro level interactions that they have with us.
So now this also then conclude this looking at the model of the instructional domain.
Oh, sorry, stepped on the cord.
Yes. Yeah.
That's okay.
Be careful, Frank. Okay, so the structural domain. So the structural domain looks at the campus structure, right? what are the things that are structured in a way that really don't lead to student success? So there's some examples here. Training infrastructure. It is not uncommon for us to visit a college where there's great professional development opportunities for those who are, I think that was you. Yeah, that was me. Can you get us back? Yeah. Okay. So to visit a college where there's great professional development opportunities, but those are primarily provided for those who are full-time faculty. So if you're a classified staff, it's hard to be able to find time to be able to leave the office, to be able to participate. If it's a part-time faculty member, they might be teaching at other institutions, they might have other job opportunities that they're trying to work through, and so being able to participate in that structure can be very difficult. But when we think about it, and it's true at this campus as well, the vast majority of those who will teach our most underserved students are those who are going to be part-timers. If we think about, for example, basic skills, it is not uncommon, and we did a study, a national study where we found that 88% of faculty members who teach basic skills of developmental education are part-timers. So it is not uncommon for those individuals not to have an office, not to have, if they do have an office, it's located in the bungalows, not centrally located, not to be paid for office hours. So we think about the importance of those individuals and interacting with the students who need the most support, but we've structured a campus in a way that simply does not allow for them to be able to do so. That is a common pattern that we've seen. We visited one college in the state where there was not one single full-time faculty member teaching in developmental education. And we said, excuse me? And they said, no, there's really not one. And I said, that can't possibly. I said, let me restate what we were asking. And like, no, there's not one. And then they had the data person, they're like, no, there's really not one. It's like, wow, okay. Now, here's the thing. This is not a hit on part-time faculty, because part-time faculty are amazing. They do great work, right? But it's a thought process about the structure of our institution that sometimes inhibits the things that we really need to take place. Now, I don't know if that's an issue here, but it's an issue that we tend to see. And then also in terms of resourcing, right? How do we resource the things that we know are important? So here's just a couple of things that we think we'd like to share. So I'm going to read actually the one on the left-hand side because I think it definitely applies to this institution as you continue to think about the unveiling of your early alert program. So many community colleges are required to have an early alert system. However, a noticeable contingent of these systems simply do not work, are not used by faculty, and notify academic advisors far too late into the semester, halfway through, far beyond the point where an intervention could curb challenges. So, early alert systems are one of the most important practices that a college can have, but it's also one of the practices that are most frequently misused. It's like mentoring programs from our perspective. Mentoring programs are great, but most mentoring programs don't work, not because mentoring doesn't work, but because the structure, design, and the program itself doesn't work. So here's some things to keep in mind that we've learned as part of the work we've done in looking at early alert systems. One thing that tends to work, the notification has to come at least within 18, they have to begin at least 18% of course progress. So if you have a 16-week course, think about what 18% of that is. That's when the notifications need to start being able to roll out. Why is that? Because if a student finds out halfway through the semester that, hey, because the faculty member, they structure their class where they have a midterm exam and then a final exam, and those are the two primary ways of knowing whether a student is going to be successful in the class. Halfway through the semester, you don't have an early alert system, you have an early drop system, or an early withdrawal system, right? So having ongoing ways throughout that semester where students are getting feedback so we can intercede before it's too late. Another thing is the relational component. We can't have a student who gets a notice from the campus without us as faculty having first had some sort of conversation with them, saying, hey, I've noticed that there's some things that are going on that you haven't been coming. Just so you know, I'm concerned and I want to be there to support you, right? So there's that relational piece. So if they end up getting a message, they know that message is coming from a place of care, not a place of, well, we're trying to punish you, right? So we actually have a webinar that we did last year or year before that talks about all kinds of different things we have to keep in mind as we unveil early alert systems. And I'm so glad to hear that this campus is doing that. That's, again, one of the most important things you can do. But again, it's also one of those things we have to do it right, right? Here's just some data from your own campus as it relates to that distribution we were talking about in terms of full-time faculty and part-time faculty and basic skills. Look on the far right-hand side. This is that demographic breakdown. 71% in 2015, 2016 of those classes were taught by part-timers. We have to think about what does that mean for us as a campus. So hopefully you're seeing here that there's something in here for every single person, right? For our part-time faculty, for our full-time faculty, for our administration, for our counseling faculty, for those who are classified. All of us have to think about what's that next thing that we need to do in order to improve success. And so what we're going to do is we're going to go to and now conclude with what are some recommendations that we have.
So recognizing that really so much of what we have to do around equity revolves around messaging and making sure that it's an institutional priority, right? So having events like this, I think, is really important, right? Where everyone, the entire campus, gets the opportunity to engage, to have a dialogue, to be on the same page, to hear that this is an institutional priority, right? And it can't be something that happens once a year. It can't be something that only happens in this space, right? Part of what we have to do is think about, okay, how do we extend these conversations beyond convocation and start to have these conversations in our department meetings, right? How do we work with our Amy and Ryan and our colleagues in IR to get the type of data that we need to really understand where are students experiencing disproportionate impact and what needs to be the focus of intervention and support for them. Hiring personnel, so we noticed that there's been a lot of hiring here, right? Certainly over the last 5 years, right? Which is awesome, right?
I thought, is everyone going to come up?
Right. I was actually waiting for our names to be right. But here's what's important, right? As you make hiring decisions and as you think about how do we best serve the needs of our students, right? Men of color, students from low-income backgrounds, students who are underserved in some way. One of the most important things that we can do is make sure that when we hire folks, that we understand that they have a proven record of success for working with students. Now, sometimes when we serve on faculty committees, faculty hiring committees, right, we'll bring someone in, they'll do a 10-minute teaching demonstration, and the rest of the time is spent in interviews and things like that, and that's important, but maybe part of what we have to do is see how would they structure a course or how would they structure a lecture and get a better understanding of how they deliver instruction in ways that best serve students who might be underserved in some meaningful ways, right? Luke talked already about a campus-wide early alert system. The only thing that I would add to what he said is that we think about early alert system as these technical things, right? And they do have a very technical nature to them. But it's also important as you design and unroll early alert systems that you're getting input from a broad range of stakeholders, right? So that you have, your folks in counseling has to be a part of it, right? But also that faculty have some input in terms of how the system is unveiled and what works for them. Otherwise, it's going to be underutilized or not have the intended effect that we hope for. So working in California is wonderful, right? Particularly in California community colleges, because as Dr. Wulff mentioned, there's been a lot of support and a lot of resources that have been directed towards student equity, which is great. Now, we think equity plans are great also because it really allows the institution to be intentionally focused on students that experience disproportionate impact, to set goals and to set targets about how they want to close equity gaps and so forth. Now, the thing about that I'm not going to say that this is a negative thing, but one thing that concerns us is what happens when the equity funding goes away, right? Or what happens when we're, get to a point where we have another economic downturn and we don't have the same type of resources and support to direct towards student equity. Well, what's really going to sustain and what's really going to sort of make it and be prioritized during those times are the things that are in the institution's strategic plan, right? So what we like to encourage campuses to do is to make sure that the equity goals are integrated into the district's strategic goals as well. Because ultimately, that's what it's going to take to transform institutions and to make sure that the efforts that have been enacted over the past 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years are sustained and continue to be prioritized even when resources become less abundant. Identifying advocates who working with underserved students within campus departments, right? So in some, we noticed that you have a veteran center, which is great, right? And many campuses have programs like Wente, programs like Umoja, programs like EOPS that are designed to work with and support underserved students. At the same time, we think that there should be advocates within academic departments, right? So who are the folks in math? Who are the folks in psychology? Who are the folks, it's a shared responsibility. Everyone has to be responsible. But who are there specific people that can really sort of be an advocate or be an ally and make sure that they're providing some leadership within departments as it relates to supporting underserved students. Luke already talked about the importance of making sure that we have full-time faculty in developmental education courses. We know that developmental education in our state, even I would say within the last 2 years, is the ways in which it's been traditionally delivered is being reconsidered. The notion of how students are assessed and placed, all those practices are being reconsidered, which we think is a good thing. But also making sure that you have full-time faculty who are there, who are on campus, and not to say that it needs to be exclusively full-time faculty, but having some full-time faculty teaching those courses, because student-faculty interactions are a really, really critical factor in the success of students who experience disproportionate impact. And then high-impact professional development for all faculty and staff. What's great about this is everyone gets the opportunity to be a part of the conversations. We've been to places where only the full-time faculty get to be a part of, have the professional development opportunities. Luke talked about the role that classified staff play, and even the role that folks who we may not traditionally see as educators play. We like to think that anyone who works at the campus and receives compensation for working at the campus has a role to play and has the potential to have a positive impact on student success. So they should also making sure that they have professional development opportunities as well. You want me to take it home? Yeah. Okay. Yep. All right. You're on a roll. Thank you. All right. So we talk about disproportionate impact groups, right? Campuses are usually good at setting goals and so forth to say, okay, we want to make sure that we improve course success for our Latino males by this amount at this point. We also think that those same type of targets need to be set within academic departments, right? So if English notices that, hey, we see that we have an equity gap between students who achieve, whose course success rates are at a certain point, we have a gap there. We need to also make sure that we have department-specific targets, and that not that we just set the targets and sort of look back and see what happens at the end of the year, at the end of 2 years, but thinking about how do we make sure at every department meeting, for example, that we have a conversation about where we are, that again, we partner with our colleagues in institutional research to make sure that we get the data and that we don't just get the data and look at it, but that we have conversations about what the data are telling us and how are we making progress towards these goals. Which sort of speaks to the second point here about having division and department agenda items that talk specifically around equity and success for students who experience disproportionate impact. Culturally relevant teaching is something that we did not get a chance to talk a lot about today, but we know that it's a very promising practice for men of color and again for students, not just men of color, but underserved students. So we also know that there are some of us, some colleagues here, who have some specialized training in making courses culturally relevant, and some of us may not have had the opportunity to be exposed to that. So identifying folks within a discipline, folks who are at the campus who have some training and who could coach and support and perhaps provide some, share their expertise with colleagues in other departments would be something that's important as well. And thinking about how do we even take what we're learning around making our courses culturally relevant and create professional learning communities, right, where we get together and make them interdisciplinary. So we have, it's not just the folks in sociology talking to the folks in sociology, but we have folks across disciplines who are coming together to work with and support each other in this. Collective and ongoing sense-making is very important, both at the campus level, but also at the unit level, however a unit is defined. Again, I think this is maybe the fourth time I've mentioned the importance of partnering with the colleagues in institutional research who, I don't want to put more on their plate because I'm sure they already have a lot to do, but thinking about how can you work with them to obtain and collect the data you need to understand, at as fine a grain level as possible what students are experiencing. And finally, with regard to classroom faculty, this is our last set of recommendations. Here are some things that we know have had some promising outcomes for students, requiring conferencing with students. So we talk a lot about relationships as being really important, right, for men of color. Well, sometimes it can be difficult to establish and sustain those relationships in a large classroom setting. So thinking about how can you have one-on-one opportunities to engage them, and not just men of color in your classes, but all your students, is something that should be considered. We also talk about appropriate disclosure as something that that students appreciate. So for example, oftentimes students see us, right? They see us in our relative positions at the college, right? We're deans or we're counselors or whatever we may be, and they assume that we've had this very seamless and easy journey to, from where we came from to where we are, right? So we often tell our colleagues, if there are opportunities, appropriate opportunities to kind of talk about your educational journey, to talk about challenges that you had to overcome along the way, that could be very empowering for students. And it's not to say that you want to sort of come across as like, say, hey, I had challenges also, I made it, so you need to sort of do the same thing. But tell your story, share your story, and allow students to draw from it what they can, right? And part of it is really sort of making ourselves, humanizing ourselves in ways that are really important for students to see us as someone that they can learn from and go to for support. Structuring success early on is really important. So Luke talked about if we're designing early alert systems, for example, we want to make sure that there's been some type of meaningful grading or meaningful assignments at about 18 weeks into the semester. Related to that, we also want to think about, particularly those of us who are teaching developmental courses or who are teaching gatekeeper classes or teaching those classes that tend to have high withdrawal rates, if we can have some sort of low stakes assignments early in the semester just to build students' confidence and for allow them to get some momentum to keep going when we know the content is going to be more challenging and going to be more difficult, that's really important to do. We talked about microaggressions a lot yesterday. Dr. Wulff noted that the college has graciously provided an online training program that Luke and I are a part of to really provide some more support and professional development around racial microaggressions. We encourage everyone to participate in that. To give you an idea of how it works, it's typically an online program that includes some readings, some videos. On Wednesday and Friday of each week that we run the course, it typically takes about a week to complete it. There's a live chat with Luke and or me where we log on and we just answer questions. It could be questions about your classes, it could be questions about the content, and it's just really sort of a way to get some deeper training and have some more deeper conversations around racial microaggressions and how they influence student success. Supplement instruction, and we talk about requiring supplement instruction. So the notion of being intrusive is important for making sure that we're approaching students, of course, but also making sure that if there are things that serve your students well in your classes. So for example, if I teach writing and I know that the students who do really well in my classes are the ones who go to the writing lab, who have drafts of their papers read before they have to submit them, we should really require students to do that, right? So we know that the A students are those who, they do it on their own, we don't have to require it, they do it, but we also have to think about this, and particularly if we're talking about men of color, if we're talking about the concerns that we've already discussed around help seeking, we have to require students to do the things that we know are going to be important for their success. Students tend to not do things that are optional, so we really need to require those things. Last point here, and then hopefully we have at least a few minutes for questions, is when you can make sure that our interactions with students are warm and positive. Even little things like if you can arrive to class a little bit early, warmly welcome students as they enter the room. Hey, Luke, it's good to see you today. Glad you're here. Looking forward to the dialogue we're going to have about whatever it is you're going to have the dialogue about. That could really, really, really go a long way in sort of helping to make sure that the climate and the ethos of the course is warm and welcoming for students. That's really important to do now. I also understand, and I've been an adjunct faculty member at multiple institutions before. Sometimes you don't have the opportunity to do that because you're literally parking and running to class as it's starting, when you have to rush off right when class ends to get to another campus. But to the extent that you can do it, it's really value added for students. And the last point with regard to being intrusive is, I'll sort of speak to my own experience. I remember there were times earlier in my teaching career where I would have a student who would be doing really well in the class, right? Maybe it's halfway through the semester, the student has about a B in the class, and then all of a sudden the student just disappears, right? Never to be seen or heard from again. Anyone ever experienced that? Right? Probably everyone at one point or another. So looking back at those moments, knowing what I know now, I wish I had taken the time to maybe send an email. Luke, I haven't seen you in a while. You're doing really well in the class. I hope you haven't decided to withdraw from the class. I just want to check in and see if there's anything going on or anything I can do to kind of support you and make sure you come back. Now, maybe there isn't anything I can do. Maybe Luke chooses not to respond, but maybe he does choose to respond and say, you know, I'm having some challenges. My job schedule, my work schedule shifted, and I can't make it like I was able to. Or I'm having some challenges with financial aid, and we know a colleague who you have an award-winning financial aid department here, right? So even making a referral could really be the difference in Luke deciding to stay or Luke deciding to leave. So when we can find opportunities, we know everyone is busy, everyone has a lot that they're doing, but even these little small things, seemingly small things for us can really go a long way in letting students know that we welcome them and support them and want to see them be successful. I think that's all that we have. Do we have any time for a few questions? Quite probably we do.
You have to repeat the question though.
We will repeat the question. Awesome, thank you.
So the question was, are the findings different for students who take online courses? So in terms of the factors, in terms of the relational piece, particularly a lot of these recommendations are built around like relationships and checking in and being intrusive. The findings show that they're essentially, we have to be doing the same things, but it looks different in an online setting. So building that kind of presence of a social presence in that environment can be more difficult, but typically intrusiveness is sometimes a little easier in an online environment because we can systematize things. So, but it's still trying to figure out ways to do that. How do I build a sense of rapport with students? So it's sitting, in an email to a student, I just saw, what you did on that blog post. It was very, very nicely done, and still providing that encouragement, but doing it through a virtual realm. If you have like online office hours, that'd be a great way to connect with students. Doing it through like a chat is not as good as doing it through like some sort of video medium. Also, like trying to build like that environment of that collection of students at the very beginning. Maybe you have like the first assignment that people do is to introduce themselves, and they have like a video that they have to post either through like Vimeo or YouTube or something like that, where they talk about this is me, this is why I'm doing this, this is why I'm interested in this class, this is what I hope to learn, just so students can get to see other students who are part of that online environment. Also, I think in terms of intrusiveness, because you might be able, taught the class a number of times, you might be able to see some general patterns like, hey, if I see these couple things happen, it's a student who I should be concerned about. Using those things and then say, okay, I'm going to be very intrusive with students who demonstrate those patterns. So a lot of the things end up being the same. It just looks different in terms of how you play it out. So these are, I would say, principles of practice, but then every single course is going to look different. For example, even cultural relevance is going to look totally different in a stats class in comparison to what it's going to look like in a history class. But we still have to do it in terms of the principle of practice. It just unveils a little bit differently. We'll take a question here, and then we'll go. Can we give an example? Say what? Okay, I'm gonna. Oh. Okay, so they're gonna roll that out college. You want to say that?
We'll share with college-wide what we're doing on early alert.
Okay, they're gonna share it college-wide, so more to come. All right, and it's being a pilot right now, so it's not gonna influence everyone for some time.
You spent some time talking about how students are hesitant to ask questions or seek assistance because they're afraid to show weakness of some sort.
Yes.
Which is no surprise to us. I was wondering if you have any tips or suggestions on how to phrase, come get help, don't be afraid to look weak.
Yeah. Don't be scared. Ask what, yeah. So I'm gonna let Frank take that, and it'll be the last one that we'll take.
So yeah, the question was how, recognizing that men of color in particular, are reluctant to seek help. What are some ways in which we can encourage them to do so, recognizing that it's important? So I was thinking maybe we could put in our syllabus, real men seek help, right? Might be one way we can do it. So a big part of it is reframing it so where it doesn't seem like help, right? So I think with the example I gave around being intrusive and making the type of help that's important mandatory rather than optional is one way we can do that. So for example, if I take my paper to the writing center to have it read, I'm not going there for help. I'm going there because it's required. I have to do it in order to get a good grade in the class, right? Or if we know, again, that we have a student who might be struggling and may need to go visit our colleague in financial aid, Patrick, is his name? Right. Like, this is a student I need to, he doesn't have a book, I need to get him to Patrick, like, as soon as possible. So it may mean that I know I can't just say, go see Patrick. I might need to give Patrick a call and say, Patrick, I got this student, this is his concern, I think you might be able to help him, he's on the way, right? Or it may mean, I have this great colleague in financial aid. I think he can really support you and make sure that you get what you need. And I just happen to be walking in that direction. Why don't I walk with you and introduce you to him, and then once that happens, you can. So doing the things that we know, it might takes a little bit more effort, but being a little bit more intrusive and making sure that we get them to the help that they need. Because even when we do everything that we think we should do, they may not follow through with it for the reasons that we've already discussed during this presentation.
Thank you for your time.
Yep.
So you can see why it was so exciting to be able to have the opportunity to share this day and the last couple of days with Frank and Luke. They're truly a gift to the California community colleges and the research and progress they're making about the topics that are so important to us today. I'm going to ask the permission from Allison and Regina. I think you know what I need to say. I'm going to bump you. Yeah. And I know you'll have an opportunity to share that probably with the faculty later and also through professional development. But it's not to minimize the work that they're doing about learning communities, but I am also mindful of your time and the time of the faculty meeting that they have scheduled. So I'm going to move into the last portion of the program, and that is to give you some insight from my perspective about where we are and where we're going. So yesterday, I was 19 years old. I was a sophomore math major at Cal Poly and a member of the Cal Poly football team. In late September of 1960, we flew to Provo, Utah, to play a non-conference game with Brigham Young University. We arrived a day early in order to acclimate to the change in altitude and had some time to kill. So 3 of my teammates and I took a walk downtown Provo, and we stopped in a cafe to get a bite to eat. After we sat down, the waitress came by and informed 2 of our party that they would have to leave and could not be served. I was initially shocked and confused and realized she was referring to John Bell and General Owens, 2 African Americans that were my teammates. I was angry and embarrassed, and we left immediately. 4 weeks later, on October 29th, following a game with Bowling Green University, John, the eldest of 8 children from Chicago, was killed, along with 15 other teammates, in the crash of our chartered airplane on takeoff from Toledo, Ohio Airport. 19 of us survived. Today, I have healed from my physical injuries and made continued progress towards the healing of the trauma that was delivered to my emotional being. I visit John and my other 15 teammates almost weekly at Cal Poly's Mustang Memorial Plaza on California Boulevard, which is next to the south end of the Spanos Stadium, to express my deep gratitude for receiving a second chance in life. And I pledge to them that I will forever work to improve the world in which we live in their honor. 20 years later, I had the opportunity to return to Provo and BYU when working on my doctorate degree. I took that walk downtown. I visited the same cafe and was pleased to see the progress and acceptance that had been made by that community and that university. My only deep regret was that John did not live to experience this change in our society, moving from isolation and exclusion to a greater degree of appreciation of differences and inclusion. I want to thank Luke and Frank for helping us as a college community to enter into dialogue about the environment and the atmosphere that we want to provide our students and each other. In addition, your contributions yesterday and today have helped me personally revisit my journey and to appreciate the progress we are making as a learning institution. So thank you for that. Yesterday, Cuesta College began in humble surroundings in a location on Camp San Luis on the south side of the Choro Creek, serving a beginning student population of about 1,600 students. Today, that location is now occupied by the California Conservation Corps, while the college moved to its current site, a 150-acre parcel of Camp San Luis Obispo bordering Highway 1, beginning the first permanent building in 1971, and we are now serving over 10,000 students per semester. Yesterday, the college employed 60 employees operating from the Camp San Luis Obispo site and several local high school sites throughout the county, but only during evening hours. Today, our workforce totals more than 900 full-time and part-time individuals serving students at the San Luis Obispo campus, the North County campus, South County Center, and through the delivery method of distance education. Yesterday, we struggled through a period of time challenged by plummeting financial support from the state, high unemployment levels in our area, declining number of high school graduates, and operational leadership and decision-making flaws that resulted in the college being deemed non-compliant with several accreditation standards, policies, and eligibility requirements. This led to multiple sanctions imposed by the Accrediting Commission. Today, the college is highly recognized for all of our collective efforts in developing our integrated planning process, participatory government and decision-making handbook, the efficacy of our operational plans, and providing our students with a highly competent teaching and service faculty, a student-centered support staff, a strong, cohesive, and diverse leadership team, and an elected board of trustees that is motivated by student success and not by political or personal gain. Yesterday, it was a seller's market. We could offer about any class we wanted, anywhere, any time of day, any day of the week, and a class filled. In 2009, we had average class fill rates of over 100%. Today, it's become a buyer's market. Students today are dictating what they want, when they want it, in what size pieces, and by what delivery method. It's no surprise that in each semester our online classes fill first. This indicates to us that we need to invest in the training of our current faculty to be able to offer part of their load in a distance or hybrid model. We need to recruit faculty with a preferred requirement of having online teaching experience or a willingness to be trained. We need to invest more thought and research in how we can deliver instruction in shorter, more modular-based formats. And we need to continue to lobby the Chancellor's Office to continue to streamline its curriculum approval process for us to be able to respond more quickly and nimbly to the demands of our students. Yesterday, the going to Cuesta rate for local high school students was about 25%. And as long as the local K-12 school districts were growing, the head count from those schools coming to Cuesta also grew. But today, the impact of the Promise Scholarship has had a going to college rate, the impact it's had on the going to college rate has been amazing. Even though the total number of high school seniors will remain flat for the next few years, the participation rate from San Luis Obispo County schools has increased to 40% and should continue to rise. I looked at the numbers today, and we have over 1,000 local high school students already enrolled. 890 of those are on Promise Scholarship. Yeah. Yesterday, less than 500 local high school students per semester enrolled at Cuesta College, outside of the regular school day through concurrent enrollment. Today, by means of dual enrollment, we have over 2,000 local high school students are enrolled in Cuesta classes taught on their respective campuses during their regular school day. A large percentage of these students, now that they have started a Cuesta transcript, will want to stay with Cuesta, especially with the Promise Scholarship available to support the cost of their education. And as many of you know, we're in a current capital campaign to raise another $10 million to support a second year of the Promise. In addition, we also received a $2 million Innovation Award to develop a pilot program with Paso Robles High School to build our dual enrollment offerings, provide direct support service to those students, and create the opportunity for students to conceivably receive their high school diploma and their associate degree simultaneously. Yesterday, we were denounced by the public via a failed bond attempt. We felt the cloud from being on accreditation sanction. We were struggling with reduced funded levels. We were disconnected from the communities that we serve, and we were not a player in statewide organizations or initiatives. But today, we succeeded in rescuing our accreditation status with a reaffirmation. We've implemented the Promise Scholarship for local students. We've successfully received a vote of confidence from the public in the form of Measure L. We completed the new educational and facilities master plans. We completed a new strategic plan. We implemented an annual community forum series called District Dialogues to encourage and invite public input to college issues, and many of our management team, faculty members, and staff are highly involved in statewide organizations and community-based organizations. You serve on boards of chambers of commerce, you serve in service clubs, you're on hospital boards, you work for nonprofits, and you're on advisory committees. Yesterday, our college organizational structure was very traditional and somewhat static, causing challenges for us to be able to adjust in changes in funding, regulations, student demand, or regulatory shifts. Today, we are constantly challenging ourselves to look for ways to restructure programs and services, modify or combine positions, revise job descriptions to be more generic so reassignments can be made rather than layoffs be implemented when funding or demand becomes tight. A recent example of this is the CAFE program, where CalWORKS, Foster Youth, EOPS, and CARE were combined into one program. Job descriptions were revised to include duties in each of these areas. Since those jobs are funded by the specific programs, this allowed the staff to be able to serve any student from walking in the door rather than the student from which they were being paid. Another restructure has occurred in counseling. Following the retirement of the former director of counseling and 3SP, the division chair role was created in student services, and a new director job description was developed to support outreach, orientation, and success activities. The focus of this position is to coordinate all of our outreach functions. We need to take the college to the community. We need to meet students on their terms, as well as provide an in-reach function, which focuses on persistence and retention. These efforts are to improve the way we utilize our resources and better serve students, while also looking for general fund savings. Yesterday, I received a phone call from then board president Pat Mullen, asking me if I would consider coming out of retirement to serve initially as Cuesta's interim superintendent president. I certainly recognize that this was not going to be a mere paper shuffling assignment, but one that had some major challenges to face, but with incredible opportunities to advance this college to new heights. My wife told me, "You know you have to say yes." Says, "This is your time to bring Cuesta College back into prominence. You've invested more than 40 years of your life to help build this college, so get on the phone and tell Pat you'll do it." And obviously, after 45 years of marriage at that time, I followed the wisdom of my wife. Today, I am extremely proud of the work that you and I have done together and have accomplished over these past 8 years. You have been part of the rebirth of Cuesta College, a college that operates by means of a system of sustainable processes with regular opportunities for assessment and improvement, a college that allows for participation in decision-making items, but fully understands that the superintendent president makes the final decision or makes a recommendation to the Board of Trustees when required. We have worked hard to create a system that is truly president-proof. As president, I know I will have an opportunity to provide input for improvement to our processes, but I also know I cannot just throw things out just because I don't agree with them. The district and college are now poised and ready for change. Change that is fueled by hope and excitement rather than fear and anxiety. I have fully met my commitments that I made to the Board of Trustees in October of 2009. I have fully completed my to-do list that I made for myself when I signed my first contract 8 years ago. I have also fulfilled the commitment that I made to my wife Janice, now of 53 years, my 5 adult children, and my 10 grandchildren. That being that I would not neglect my role as a husband, a father, and grandfather just because of this job, a job that I technically didn't need. So having said that, I will be submitting my letter of retirement to Dr. George, the President of the Board, for action on September 6th, 2017, with my last day of service to be June 30th of 2018. Dr. George and the rest of the trustees can then begin planning the search process, starting with the September 6th board meeting. This is the one hiring process that is exclusively under the control of the board. They will determine who and how and when the process will take place and who is selected. The reason for this early announcement is to give the board 9 to 10 months to complete the search process and hopefully avoid the need to bring in an interim. Even though the challenges were somewhat daunting when I came back in January of 2010, I have to admit that the last 8 years have been the most gratifying professional experience in my 54 years in education that I could have ever hoped for. I want to thank you all for that. For without your commitment to excellence and your belief in student success and your support of all the systems and the processes that we've put into place, we would not have succeeded to the level at which we are today. Now, some people have said, well, aren't you concerned you're going to be a lame duck? And I thought about that. So, well, maybe a limping stork will be. But in closing, and I say this from the bottom of my heart, I will forever be grateful to have served you. Thank you. And I couldn't leave without acknowledging somebody that has made this all possible. In 1967, I was teaching at San Luis High School. Very happy, had great teaching. I had all the college prep classes in math, coaching football and baseball. We had awesome athletic programs. And I got a phone call about, hey, there's a football job open at Cuesta College. So I said, I'll go check it out. You know, I came out to campus and I said, whoa, we got cows on campus. They got cow stuff on campus. You know. So I decided to apply. I interviewed with both the PE department and the and the mathematics department. And then I had my interview. I interviewed in the back of a 1955 Chevy in the parking lot of San Luis Obispo High School with Warren Hansen, who was the athletic director, and Dr. Frank Martinez, who was the vice president of instruction, who became the second president of the college, and who's been my mentor for all of these 50 years. And Dr. Martinez is here today. He's here because of me. Yeah, I know. He always puts me right back where I belong, you know? And I promised my wife wouldn't do this, but I'd like to acknowledge my wife and my youngest granddaughter, Fina. Yeah, they're right next to us. Stand up. Stand up. Yeah, it's been a true partnership. I mean, coming to work is easy. Going home and talking about it and getting grilled? No. Well, thank you, everybody, for what a wonderful ride, and I'm so proud of you, and I have such great hopes for you and this college in the future. And I'm not done until June 30th of 2018. And as I told Pat Mullen at one time, I said, yeah, you know, nothing ever stops. You just look for the off-ramp, you know, to take. And then he reminded me, you know what, for every off-ramp, there's another on-ramp. So have a great semester. Thank you.